here we are to continue talking about JavaScript, object-oriented programming, and the breakout game. And so far we've done pretty good. We have a bunch of classes here. We just have one more class to write, and that's the game class. And the game class is going to own everything. So in order to make a game, we'll just make one game instance. So a game object, will have all these properties. It'll have objects that it owns, like the ball, the brick, the paddles, right? So let's define that. So I'm going to start here. Class game. We might even be better as class breakout, right? Game's a little too generic, but we'll call it game for now. So we'll say constructor, and then what happens here? Now, the code here, up here, I have all these classes that I've created, right? And then what I did is I moved here and defined instances. This is where I created instances of all the objects. Like I kind of grouped all these together, right? I put the ball and the paddle and the bricks and the score label and the lives label and some other things here, right? So let's take all of these and give them to our game. So I'm going to cut them out of here, and inside the constructor for the game, I'm going to give it some properties. So I'll say this.ball, this.paddle, this.bricks, this.score label, and this.lives label. Now the constants actually would be good if we move them into the game class, but that's gonna take a lot of writing, so I'm gonna leave that out for now. Okay, but we'll plug those in later. But anyway, now I've got these properties here, and they all belong to the game. Okay, then we configure the lives label here, and we reset the ball and paddle. So these kind of do similar things, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the actually too, we have this right and left pressed. Let's move these into the game class, because I think the game should own this. The game should know if you press the left or right arrow key, right? So let's make these properties of the game class, right? And then let's give the game class a method where it can do these things, okay? So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a, how about a method called setup, okay? And what we'll do is inside the constructor here, we'll say this dot setup. So anytime we initialize the game, it creates all these instances, and then it calls this method to do any other work. And actually, we could move all of this into setup, so that way, you just go to the constructor, it would see setup, and then it would do its work. Or you could rearrange this. Sometimes they call this init or initialize or something like that. But I'm going to put this here, and then I'm going to take these two things and put them here. And you'll notice that lives label is now this.lives label because it will belong to an instance of the game. So we'll have to put this.lives label. And this little maneuver right here where we put this dot in front of all of these things is going to have to happen in all the code now. So we're going to have to be very careful. We're going to have to read through and find everywhere we used, ball, paddle, bricks, score label, right? And then we'll have to put this dot in front, right? But before we get there, let's do one more thing, right? Oops, let me close that, right? So what I'd like to do is, I don't have this reset ball and paddle. This is a method that's outside of the game class. I'd like to make it a part of the game class. So what I'll do is I'll take this method, I cut it out from down below, and I'll put it inside the game class. Now, I'm being careful to look for this curly brace right here, because this is where, the game class ends. Right, so put a line there to remind us, right? So all the methods of the game class and the properties and things, they all have to be inside this curly brace, right? So I've pasted this function here, and to add a new method to a class, we can just put a function in there and remove the keyword function. So this method now belongs to the class, okay? So in order to call it, we put this dot in front of the method name, right? So to call this method here, we do it the same way that we called the setup method, okay? And now instead of ball, we'll say this dot ball, this dot ball, right? Let me just paste that. And paddle start is one of our constants. We should probably move that in here. We'll do that later. The same thing with canvas, right? Okay, we'll clean that up later on. Okay, so cool, so that's good. So what other methods do we have, right? Well, we've got the collision detection method. So let's cut this whole method here, and we'll add it to our game class. So I'll paste it here, and then I'll remove the function keyword, and then bricks is going to be this dot bricks. Let me just copy this dot. I'm going to use it so many times, right? And then we'll put it here, and then this brick right here is a local variable that we're defining with the keyword const, so it doesn't need a this dot in front of it, but bricks here does, right? Because we defined this dot bricks up above here, right? And we need this dot ball. Remember, brick is a local variable, so we're going to skip that, and then we'll do this dot ball, this dot ball, this dot ball, and what is this one? Oh, because I got an extra indent there. Okay. Score label is also another property that we assign to the game, so we'll put this dot score label and this dot bricks, and I think that looks pretty good there. And now let's do the next one, right? So so actually all these functions are going to go, right? Move paddle will go into our class. It'll go above the end of the class, but inside, right? Because this is the end collision detection, right? So move paddle will go here. So we'll remove the keyword function. I can get rid of that comment for now. And then right pressed and left pressed, remember I added those to the class here, so they belong to our instance, so we'll have to say this dot, right? So we'll put it here. It'll have this dot paddle. Canvas is global, it goes outside. Paddle though belongs to this this class though, so we'll put this dot in front of those. Okay, so now collision with canvas and paddle, right? So this is like another long function with a lot of stuff in it. I'll cut it out of here, and I'll paste it at the bottom of my class. And then I have to put this dot in front of wherever it says ball, right? Oh, I had ball radius still in here. This should have been this dot ball dot radius, right? Yes, a good thing I spotted that, right? And then this one too. So this would be this dot ball dot radius, right? Actually, you can put a line return here, so sometimes that makes it a little easier to read. You know, if I'll just break that, I think you can break it at this operator there. And then this will be this dot ball, this dot ball, and this dot ball dot radius. Yeah, I totally missed all those. Let's see here, but I caught them now. Okay, so we're almost done here. And this is a big change. It's not going to work. The game won't work also if we move some of the stuff into this, oh yeah, I got to remove the keyword function there, right? So it's not going to work until I make all the changes. So, you know, we can't do this like halfway or test it along the way, you know, or not easily anyway. So, oh yeah, and then reset ball and paddle has to have a this dot in front of it. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. And then the last is the draw method and then the key down, key up handlers, okay? So, and then there's a couple weird things that are gonna happen with this. So, so let's get the draw method. Okay, so I'll cut that out of here and I'll paste it in here, get rid of function, and then the CTX will go in here. This is going to be the global one. That's one that we should take care of, right? But again, like I think we're going to do that. We'll do that after we get it kind of working again. We can kind of clean it up. So I got to make all of these have a this in front of them, right? Okay, RequestAnimationFrame is a global function, so we don't put this in front of it. Draw is a method that belongs to this class, so we put this in front of it. This is going to break our program. Okay, let's do, I'm going to put this note in here, fix me, okay? So this is a point where the program's going to break, and it may not be obvious why. I'm going to leave it like this because this is going to fool a lot of people, okay? So we're going to come back to this. Maybe it even needs more. It's like it's enough to fool you where it needs even more stars. So we'll put a whole bunch of stars there, okay? Maybe we should do like arrows too because it's like super danger zone, weird problem, okay? So we've got that marked out. Okay, now we need our key down handler, key up handler. These two are also potential problems. So let's cut all three of these, paste them into the game class. I'm going to put them above draw. And then we'll remove the keyword function in all of these, and then we got to put this in front of all the properties that are now belonging to the game class. So I'll do these guys, and actually these are kind of our globals. Again, we're gonna have to like deal with those. Paddle. I think that looks pretty good. Still some things to fix, but we're almost there. Okay, so we can get rid of all of these guys. Actually, we're going to put those comments inside of our class, right? And now we have to register the events. So in order for these events to get registered, we need to move this into our game class. So I cut those out of there. I'm going to go into the game class, and I feel like this should go into setup, okay? Because this is kind of where we, need to do things, right? That, this is like where we need to do the things one time before the game starts working. Okay, so there's like the setup that we do to start the whole thing. So we'll put this here. We'll add our event listeners. This key down handler is one of the methods that belongs to the game class, so we'll have to mark it with this. Okay, and this is also like, I'm going to put a note in here with a bunch of stars. Fix me, because this is like a potential area where we're going to have some trouble. Okay, So we'll do this dot mouse move, right? Okay, and now we got one more thing to do, right? So if I scroll all the way to the bottom, there's this one line of code where we called the draw method, and that's what starts the whole thing. Let me get rid of these comments too, right? Okay, so I copied the call to draw, and what we want to do is we want to, when we create an instance of the game, we want to run the constructor to create all of our properties and give them values. Maybe we call this setup method to set up things before we run the program. And then when we start drawing the game, we have to call draw one time. Okay, so we'll call draw. Now let's get into the problem here with Requestanimationframe. Okay, so let's try it, right? So let me scroll back up to the game class. I passed it up. There it is, game, right? We should make some other lines here to kind of organize my code a little bit better, right? Maybe I'll do that like on my own time, right? But anyway, so here's our game class, and let's give it a quick test. So I'm going to go to the browser here and then refresh, and I don't see anything, right? So when I go to the console here, you can see, let me see if I can get, I'm not getting any errors. Oh yeah, I forgot, we got to do one more thing. So I left one step out, right? Okay, I made the class, and actually this is a good lesson here. Remember, in order to use instances of classes, we have to make one, right? We have to use new ball to actually make a ball object that we're storing here. And we haven't actually made a game class, so there's no instance of game. Let's make one of those. So I'll scroll to the bottom here, and then let's make a const. We'll call it game equals new game. Okay, and then it's potential we could give the game properties to configure it that you'd pass in here. You could set the size of the screen or the number of lives or whatever, but that's already kind of coded in there, so I'll just leave it alone. But we need to make an instance of game. So let's save that and then run our code here. And when I run it, it says undefined is not an object evaluating this.bricks. But we have the bricks, right? So let's, and actually let's look at the line number there, okay? It says main.js line 299. So let's go look at that, right? So I'll take a look here, 299. Okay, so here we are. Okay, so it did the draw method, right? We did the draw method once, and then what happened, right? It got to this line, and then it couldn't find bricks. But let's try something, right? Here's an experiment, right? What if I say console log, and then I say, I'm going to say game.draw, because that's the method that we called on. Okay, and then we'll look at this in the console, right? So it should print this, and then we have an error, right? Okay, so let's take a look. So I'll run it, and you can see it did it once, and then there was no error, and then it did it a second time, and there was an error. Okay, so here is what's going on, right? Let's see. So the game runs. Well, actually, let's look down here. So we create an instance of the game, and then up here in the constructor, somewhere it's pretty far up here, we do the constructor, we create instances of all the objects, and they exist, right? And we set these to their default value. We call the setup method, and we do these things, okay? And then we call the draw method one time. And the first time we call that, you know what? Everything works perfectly. And then we pass the draw method to request animation frame. So we didn't execute the draw method here. We would have put the parentheses there. So we're not running the code. We're just giving the method as a value to request animation frame. And what this does is when the computer is going to draw the screen again, it runs this method that we've given it, okay? And it runs the draw function again. And that's the second time we see the console log message. And that time we get an error. So the first time when we called the method draw from the constructor here with this.draw, everything worked perfectly. That's because this was our instance of the game object. The second time when we pass the draw method to request animation frame, it runs the method but assigns itself to this, and the game object that we created is no longer this. So every this in here the second time through is a different object. Let's actually test that theory here. I'm going to console log the value for this here, okay? And then watch what happens in the window. So here you can see the first time it runs game.draw, you see the game object and it has the ball and the paddle and the bricks and everybody's fine. Like it's got bricks and it has a value there. The second time through, this is undefined. Okay, so this is the thing. You can do me a favor. I want everybody to Google JavaScript. This is confusing. Okay, right? Okay, so no, I'm serious. There's like so many people have written so many articles on this, right? Okay, so Google JavaScript. This is confusing. And we're not saying like this, meaning JavaScript is confusing. We're saying the keyword this in the JavaScript language is confusing sometimes, okay? So we just have to think that sometimes this is not what you think it is, and it's like the object that owns the method assigns itself to this most of the time. Sometimes that's not the case, but in this example, that's what's happening. So how do we, everybody's asking like, how do we fix that, right? Well, how we're going to fix it is we're going to do it this way. There's a couple ways to do this, okay? One way is to use bind like this. So we can say this draw equals, or this dot draw dot bind this, right? And what this will do is it will force JavaScript to keep this as the this whenever it calls the draw method, right? The this at the moment that this was that we called request animation frame, we're binding the this value so this can't change. Okay, we're binding it so it won't change, right? Without the bind, this can change, right? If that makes any sense, right? I gotta think of some better ways to describe that, but Google this and read about it, right? But let's give that a try. So if I run it now, oh, actually looks like the game is kind of working, right? The paddle's not working for the same reason. Okay, so we're gonna fix that. So you can do bind. That's one way to fix this, right? I'm actually gonna fix it another way. I kind of like doing it in this other way. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is inside request animation frame, I'm going to create an anonymous function, and then I'm going to call this.draw inside that anonymous function. Okay? And this solution works too. The bind one is kind of cleaner maybe because it's on one line, but I find that reading this one is sometimes it's not as obvious what's going on. When I read this one, it's very obvious like what I'm doing, even though it ends up being on a couple different lines, okay? So I kind of prefer this. It's easier for me to read it. And let's see. What am I missing here? Actually, it doesn't like my solution there. I think that should work. Let's see here. What am I missing here? Undefined is not an object doing this draw. Wait, let's make sure I'm on the right line there, right? 309. Yeah, why doesn't it like that one? let's see here. What did I do wrong there? Oh, you know what I forgot? I used a regular function there. I should be using an arrow function. There we go, right? Okay, so so we'll fix that, right? And so we fix that, right? So that's kind of working. Now what's going on with the paddle? Well, you know what? The same thing is happening with the paddle, okay? When you assign something to document add event listener, then if we give it this handler, right, if we give it the key down handler, then if we give it this function, if we assign it this function, when it runs the function for us, when a key down event occurs, this becomes document or whoever is executing that function for us. So we either need to bind this or use an anonymous function to call the function for us, right? So so you can do it either way. You can do bind, or I think I'm going to do it the other way because I always like to do it this way. I'm going to put an anonymous function here like this, and then I'm going to say this dot key down handler. Now the tricky bit about this one is if the key down handler actually takes an event object. We're actually not using it, but if you need that, it will come in here as a parameter. So you can put the E here, and then you would pass it along right there to key down. Okay, so let's try that. I'm going to do it. Actually, I'll do this other one as a bind too, just for fun, right? So if we do this one, we can say bind this. And then on the last one, I'll do it as, I'll do this one as a bind too, right? So we'll do bind like that, okay? So again, this is confusing. It even confuses me, right? So we'll save that and we'll give it a test, right? So what do we got here? Oh, my arrows are working, right? So actually the mouse event is not working, but the arrow keys are working, right? Okay, let's go check our mouse event. So I got mouse move here. Where's the mouse move function? Oh yeah, here we are, right? So we have to make sure that mouse move gets this event object, the E right here. Okay, so we're using it, we're actually not, actually yes, we are using it here, so we need to have it there too. I'm not quite sure what's going on with the paddle. Maybe I made a mistake in here. I'll go through and figure it out, but I'm going to leave this video here, and then you guys can follow that and follow what's here. And then in the next video, we'll kind of organize our code a little bit and start working on inheritance, okay?